Well, renting out a house isn't the only thing you can rent, and if you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or anybody else who may want to rent office space or potentially buy it, well, I guess you kind of got to go through the same things Hank Coleman was just talking about. Matthew Royal joins us, the president managing broker of Royal Commercial Corp, who brings insight and innovation to us from the corporate real estate industry, which he has been an expert in for more than 20 years. Hello, Mr. Matt.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brashenomics. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
Good.
Good. You know, and we have to, at the end, we have to talk about one of those things that people have to pay for down the road, down when we're at the end of the segment. You know, I just want to make sure we clue people into our last conversation.
Oh, yes.
So they don't forget about it, because, you know, I was so intrigued, and anyways, we'll get there.
Yes.
But before we do, I guess that's part of the cost-benefit analysis.
That would be a detail you wouldn't want to overlook.
So you don't want to overlook it.
Yes.
So, Matt, when somebody is looking to buy versus lease, become a landlord in a commercial sense, it really becomes, I mean, you really got to look at the numbers, don't you? I mean, that's a huge piece of that.
Absolutely. And one of there's two types of owners or investors. There's just a pure investor that says, hey, I have blank dollars and I want to buy a commercial property and be a landlord. And then there's your owner user who wants to buy the property and move his or her business into it and operate the business out of that property. The other follow-up question to that is, do I want to buy more property than what I need and lease out half of that to help me with, you know, the maintenance and repairs and get a bigger
Take all the view offices and
leave the scut for the tenant coming in there. And we talked about
this.
What
is scut?
The bad office.
Okay.
The scut work. Yeah, sorry. The crappy office.
Got it. Yeah, there we go.
But as we talked before, when you're considering that, there's same thing we talked about before. You assemble your team, which would include your CPA, your legal advice, and then a practicing professional broker who can help you do some valuations. And the reason you need all three of those is because it factors into how you get the loan, how you take the property, meaning what name you take the property in. If it's an owner-user, do you take it in the company name in which the company would be the owner? Or does the owner buy the property and lease it back to the company? Or is there a separate entity that the owner, the person buying the building, would want to create and then have his company pay the entity and then the entity pay the owner? So, and that would depend individually on the business, the owner, their tax implications, and what they want to do with it going forward. And I'm not a legal scholar by any means, or a tax accountant by any means, but there's estate planning for business owners and how they would transfer the property down the road to avoid those messy taxes. And
it's amazing that you do have, I mean, it's almost everything you do, whether it's residential or commercial, you do need these teams assembled.
Yeah, and anyone can run out there if they've got a lot of money and drop it on a building and say, oh, I'm going to do this. But backtracking after the close of the transaction is costly and complicated. So if you just assemble the team up front and ask all the hard questions, you know, which is, who's going to buy it? How much are we going to buy? How much are we going to finance? What's cash? Blah, blah, blah. And how you're going to carry that forward so you can actually do your quote-unquote cost-benefit analysis that says, no, we should lease or we should buy. So there's... And that takes all three of those professionals to actually set that up and execute it. You can wing it without them, but as we've talked before, you pay it up front or you can pay it in the back, and you just sleep better at night knowing that you've got it set up right, that you've executed where you needed to, you've got it. There's no hidden things coming up on you in the future. So.
Where, you know, if you're a business owner, and you're considering, you know, buying an office building or leasing one, what are some of the questions that as a broker you're asking that business owner to determine if either or is the right decision for them?
One of the things that it's a good question. One of the things that I do when I first talk to a potential client or a tenant is, you know, how long have you been in business? What is your business? Is your business volatile? What type of property you're looking for? Is it office? Is it industrial? Is it retail? There's all those questions, and you just talk with them so that you get their kind of comfort and ease with their business. If they just started a business 2 years ago, that may be a little premature in the business life cycle to buy a building in the business's name. So it's like, well, if you have some extra cash, maybe you open another entity, check with your attorney, have that entity buy the building, and that way, if the business should have a loss, it wouldn't affect the asset or tie up the asset of the company, which is the building. So there's a lot of those. And again, that's where the legal professional comes in. But those are some of the just kind of round table questions that you want to talk with the owner about. Is the owner married? Does he or she have a spouse? And should there be a separation? Who gets the building and who gets the business?
We've been talking a lot about that recently.
But again, the legal expert, the CPA involved, and you plan forward 10 plus years so that you can actually know when the economy turns good or bad, or if the owner wants to sell the business, if he does a conventional hard money or SBA loan, then they know the answers to those before anything ever comes up.
Well, I would imagine the growth piece of this and how fast a business, how they expect to grow is huge, because if you buy a building and you outgrow it, you can't just back out of it, right?
No, you can't just say, oh, never mind, I'd like another, So that's why, the planning of that saying, if your business is mature and you make widgets and you're only going to ever make 100,000 widgets a month, and this is the right size of space you need. Well, that's it, because the owner says this is all the widgets we're making. But if there's grander plans that say, no, our expansion could be tenfold that, do you want to lease or do you want to buy? Or do you want to lease with an option to buy? There's so many different variables in there. Do you want to lease or buy a bigger building on an SBA loan, and you have to occupy at least 51% of that building? Well, you can have a growth strategy that says, we're going to occupy 51% of this building. We're going to use it, pay the mortgage, and pay a lease on it. And then there's 49% of the building that we can expand into over the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. If you think your growth is going to be sooner than 3 years, or sooner than 3 years, don't do a 5-year lease. That kind of shoots.
So there's some real practical questions that go into this. We're here with Matt Royal, President and Managing Broker with Royal Commercial Corp. Matt, just a couple of minutes before we have to go to break. But, I mean, it's real practical questions you have to ask yourself as a business owner. Yeah,
and we've seen it, and we've all heard stories to where, a lot of building owners and business owners had grand, lofty plans to make a lot of money and to do a lot of great things. Well, sometimes forces outside of the business owner's control come in, and that causes you a great deal of hardship and pain. And when you structure these right going into them, you alleviate those pain points further down the road, because an exit strategy is always as important, if not more important, than an entrance strategy. Anybody can walk in and do it, but if you don't have it set up right, it's really difficult to unwind it and save your skin and walk away.
Well, and Matt, we do have to go to break, but before we do, I do have to, when you start thinking about owning a building, one of those things that people maybe take for granted, and we talked about this before, is the paper towels versus the air
operational
dry
expense.
machine.
Those paper towels will kill you.
Yeah,
and they'll just take you down. No, that was another off-air topic that was a while back, and
I liked it.
I think there was some profanity in that conversation.
You were fine. The one thing he mentioned before the show that was also interesting is having an outward swinging door will reduce the amount of paper towels people use because they don't use an extra one to open it.
It's all in the margins. It's all in the margins. And then, if you use too many paper towels and you have small holders, you're going to have to get a day porter in your building to come in the middle of the day to stock the paper towels because people run out of paper towels. So then it just goes crazy on the expenses.
No paper towels, man.
Yep, air dry.
Air dry. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. We have to go to break. When we come back, one of our favorites, Stephen McDonald's going to join us with John L. Scott. Talk a little bit about selling a house in this market. And what do you do if your house isn't selling right now in a market that is this hot? We'll be right back after this break. You're listening to Brashenomics.